What if Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Mr. Princess, SoundCloud, SoundClick? Let's get focused, people. Oh, hold on. Okay. Anyway, it's your boy Town 2 coming at you one more again. Yes, I am. Alright, so somebody asked me a question about my last video, which I did on how did they build the pyramids. I'm jamming a little bit out here. Beautiful day out here. Jamming a little bit. Alright, I know my neighbors think I'm weird, but I don't care. Because I am weird. You gotta be a little off kilter. You know, nowadays when you start dipping into UFOs, you gotta be a skeptic. And that's what I am. I'm, I'm interested. So, like I always say, let us delve into the unknown. Let us dip into some hyperbole, some conjecture, a little lunacy, and see what we come up with. Because, you know, some people think you're crazy when you start talking about gray people walking around. Nonetheless, you know, there's so much evidence that we think that those people who think we're crazy are crazy for not believing what we believe. But let's talk about time travel. I think UFOs, aliens, angels, demons, God, the devil, I think all that is intertwined with time travel. Now, there's been some strong cases for time travel. The Mike Tyson fight, where a guy had a video camera phone, which wasn't out then. Finn, the guy from the 1800s, that appeared in like 1960 something, and he got hit by a car. He looked around like he didn't know where he was. He got hit by a car, and then they found the money that he had on him was from the 1800s. Also, they found out that he was missing back in 1800. So I think he's one of those people that leaned on a wall and, you know, traveled through time and showed up in a whole different country, and even the same country, just a different time, you know. And it happens. I already told you guys about the veteran who went through the Bermuda Triangle and how time stopped. Now that makes me really curious. He also said that he saw a disc going right past his ship. This is a guy that was in the Navy. He's a little older than I am. He's like almost 70, you know, and we were both in the military. But nonetheless, when he explained that to me and how his brand new watch stopped, he said even on the ships, the watches stopped. You know what I'm saying? Everything was still. The weather, just the wind stopped everything. So that made me very curious, and then he was told not to say anything. So, okay. So, the Bible, and I don't know the verses, but I was listening to Hebrew Israelites. I don't necessarily follow them, but I listen to them because they research things that I like to, you know, I'm like, is that possible? I don't believe all in what they believe, but I like research. I like to hear somebody talk about what they researched. They took the time and researched. And they were talking about how humanity is destroyed and then it comes back again. And then I heard a preacher say something of the same light. And they were using the Bible, and I was just like, wow. So they're saying that this happens over and over and over again, which is a form of time travel. So, okay, I was looking at some other time travel videos, and they had this, it looked like a screw or something that was mechanical that was found, you know, like a million years ago or so. And I'm like, okay, that happened. And happens over and over and over. There was a watch found in the tomb 400 years ago. There was no watches 400 years ago. But it was found in the tomb. It was like, how did it get there? You know what I mean? Did somebody time travel there, get stuck in the tomb and couldn't get out? They didn't find nobody's bones. But, you know, how did that watch get there? Did the watch travel through time itself? Like, are objects... see, we are limited in our information, but we are also limited in our thinking, and one coincides with the other. So when you have limited information, you have limited thinking, and therefore you hypothesize on what you think you know. Once again, there are known knowns and known unknowns. So we think humans travel through time and they bring along an object, but we don't think this object just traveled through time. It's like boom, this 1968, you know, uh, Chevy whatever, all of a sudden, was driving down the street, with somebody in it, was driving down the street, and then boom, it showed up in the year 2017. You know, human and everybody in it. Or the 1978 Chevy was sitting in the garage in 1978, and all of a sudden it went through time. See, we think that we need to manipulate time for us to go through time, but I don't believe that. I believe time just needs to say it's time for something to go through time. You guys follow me on that? I know I sound a little crazy, but that's okay. That's the fun part of these conversations. When you ask me to do a video on something, I just simply, I don't do a bunch of research. I just tell you what I already know and how I feel about it. Then you can go and do your research on that, or you can agree or disagree. That's fine. There are 8 billion of us on this planet, and we can all have a different opinion, and it's okay. You know what I mean? So I think that time is constantly moving. Time is like time is like the oceans and the slipstream. They coincide together. You have the Gulf Stream and the slipstream. They both coincide. When one is disturbed, the other one is disturbed, and they will do something to correct themselves. So when you have desalinization, because there is a mountain of ice the size of New York that just fell in the sea uh, uh, from one of the polar ice caps, that fresh water dips into the salt water and desalinizes that salt water, and then you have and then you have hurricanes, you have tornadoes. I think time is its own stream, but nonetheless, I think it's also manipulated by something. You know what I'm saying? I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it definitely isn't just us. I think there's something else that manipulates time. I can't really say the spirit world, but I can't leave it out. But there's time is a flowing river, and I think whenever it wants to move something, literally, it just moves it. It just disappears. Okay, so let's get back to what we know. There are known knowns and there are known unknowns. Let's get back to what we know. Recently, there was a sighting in Africa where a whole village saw a moving city floating above them. I'm gonna take a bite of this apple while y'all think about that. Now, some people may say, city in Africa, non-civilized or uncivilized. They might have thought they were just simple-minded people or something. But even, hey, what's going on? But even if you thought that, you still can't deny the fact that everybody saw something. Everyone, not just one person. Here's the real kick in the pants. Last year, the same thing happened in a completely different country. I think it was in Japan or China, and it stayed there. And I think it actually happened in the Americas too. You guys can check me on that. I'm okay with that. I don't mind being wrong. But I know it happened more than once, and it was the same city. Now, of course, biblically, there's a city in the distance. God talks about the city and yada, 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 and heaven and all of this other stuff. And I go back to what we think heaven is and what heaven isn't. But nonetheless, this city did not look like something that was made by God and the angels. And not to say that they don't make it. What I'm saying is it looked normal to us. Whenever somebody goes to heaven, they talk about how beautiful heaven is because it's foreign to them. They talk about what they've seen there and the people they see and the objects they see, and they're in awe and they're surprised. I've been to heaven a few times. Trust me, I've never seen nothing like that. But when they saw this city, it looked familiar to them. It was like Chicago was floating over Chicago. But nonetheless, they knew it was a floating city, although they couldn't identify what city it is. Now, there has been sightings like this, like mountains on the horizon, where you know there's not a mountain there. And you think this is a play on your eyes. You think it's a mirage or something. But it's happened over and over again. There's been two sunsets in the same night. Like, how is that possible in two opposite directions? See, I believe time is doing this. I don't think this is human manipulation. I don't think this is an alien thing. I believe that there is more than one universe, and you guys gonna really have to follow me on this one. I've mentioned this before. The spirit man and the physical man are two different men. Even in the Bible, God talks about two different deaths. It says your body dies and your spirit dies. God talks about sinning against the soul. When you sin against the soul will surely die. He's talking about the soul dying. He laid down examples of that when he healed the little girl, brought her back to life. He called her spirit. He said she's not dead, she's asleep. So when our body physically dies, God calls that being asleep. He said those who are asleep will be reawakened and, taken up into heaven. God calls that sleep. When he talks about death, he talks about your soul dying. Boom. Okay, let's get that out the way. Now, I want to talk about sleep itself. Now, in that example, when Jesus healed Lazarus and he healed the girl, he said they were both asleep. So, let's think about that. Their soul traveled somewhere, and he said God called to them. God called to Lazarus. When you call to somebody, that means that somebody is in a distant place. Whether it's right beside you or whether it's 30 miles from you or whatever it is, you call to them, they come to you, right? Like you're calling your kids to come in for dinner. You know what I'm saying? You call to them. Okay. God called to Lazarus, and his body, and his spirit came back to his body. His body got up. Mind you, Lazarus was dead for 3 days. Okay, so now we think that's impossible. So God says he was just asleep. So when I look at that, I say, okay, then the body can be physically dead, but the spirit can still roam and come back to the body, and you're considered asleep. Now, when we sleep, we dream about going to places or doing certain events, and sometimes people have come out with scratch marks on them, or they've dreamed inside of a dream. I had a dream when I went into a dream, and then I went into another dream. I woke up 3 times before I came back to Earth. I've done this more than one time, and I was afraid the first time I did it because I was like, I know I'm still dreaming. This is what I said in my dream. So I learned how to control my dreams because I used to have terrible nightmares. I still do. But now when I have these nightmares, I'm like, I know I'm dreaming, and then I wake up. Here's the thing. I've had some dreams where I went to different planets. And I was like, okay, and these dreams kept coming to me, and then I dreamed that these beings were actually talking to me, and they were like, let me show you where we lived or where we live. So we had spacesuits on and everything, and I'm like, okay, this is something out of Star Trek or whatever. But the outfits we had on looked nothing like anything I've ever seen, and it was so real. This dude picked me up in a small spaceship, and it was a battleship. It wasn't a huge one, but we went to another battleship. He put me up in a spaceship. We were in space, trust me. And he was like, let me show you where we live. And he started pointing out where he lived. And he was like, see these stars right here? This is where we live. Now I traveled to where they lived. And they live on a planet that is round, and everything on the planet is round. Everything. Every building that they had was round. That's what I mean. All the building structures were round. And they had a group of leaders, a high council, so on and so forth. But the thing about them, that they were at war with other planets. Now, I know this sounds like something out of Star Wars. But the thing about this is they had more than one sun. And their suns were huge. And the thing about their suns were they were moving and colliding into each other. And what they were saying is their solar system is dying